Right. In our last lecture, we discussed about Gaussian mixture and EM algorithm as a general framework to compute the maximum likelihood estimation when our problem involves some unobserved variables or random variables. And then, in the case of Gaussian mixture model, we we also discussed about its relation to K-means algorithm. And so K-means is a special case of Gaussian mixture model, and it's a EM-based optimization algorithm. But here in the K-means, the covariance matrix for each Gaussian component is fixed as a identity matrix. Okay, but more exactly, it's not exactly identity matrix, but it should be like some sufficiently small value of this epsilon times identity matrix. But anyways, so we fixed this common covariance matrix as an identity matrix across all the different Gaussian components, and also the prior is fixed as a uniform distribution, and then the Gaussian mixture model and its EM algorithm is is reducing to this K-means algorithm, and also K-means is basically comparing the distance of a given point to each of our cluster centroid. So if we have a 3 clusters and their centroids, and then for a given point, and then we find out the closest centroid point by just comparing the distances, right? And then in that case, if you guys remember, then this Gaussian distribution also has something like some components similar to the Euclidean distance between the cluster centroid and the given point. But here in case of general Gaussian mixture model, we have some general or non-identity covariance matrix, right? And this covariance matrix will distort our two-dimensional or our high-dimensional space, right? So along some direction, the distance gets much smaller, and along some other direction, the distance gets much farther. Okay, so such kind of distortion is done based on this non-identity covariance matrix and its inverse. Okay, in this place. Okay, so incorporating this some of the positive semi-definite matrix in the place of this Gaussian mixture, in this place of a inverse of a covariance matrix, and then computing the Euclidean distance by involving this sigma inverse is called Mahalanobis distance. Okay, so that's what we studied last time. So in general, Mahalanobis distance is determined like x and transpose and x minus y, and then we have some covariance matrix, maybe inverse, or some covariance matrix itself. But here this covariance matrix should be positive semi-definite. So what's the definition of the positive semi-definite or positive definite of a given matrix? It is a symmetric and positive semi-definite. Okay, so this guarantees for any vector, and for any vector A, and then A transpose A will be 2 norm squared, right? So row vector and column vector, right? But in the middle, we have some covariance matrix inverse, or let's call this matrix as for example C, and then A transpose C and A. Okay, and so if this work as a valid metric or the distance measure, and then yeah, so in the place of an A, we are just plugging this arbitrary vector A, right? And so if it can work as a valid distance measure, and then it should be greater than or equal to 0, because it will still be considered as a distance metric, right? For all vector A in maybe Rn, and C is n by n matrix. Okay, so this is the property or the definition of this positive semi-definite. Okay. Then also it should be symmetric, and the symmetric is coming from the from the property of a covariance matrix inverse, and so covariance matrix is computed as sum of our outer product. Yeah, so yeah, how do we compute the covariance matrix? Or its computation is quite similar to something called the gram matrix, popularly used in style transfer. So if we have a feature vector as a column, and then this is a height and weight and the blood type and the location and the age and so on. So each row is our feature, and this is a person 1, person 2, person n, and so on. Okay, so in this case, so we bring each column vector or each feature vector, and then let's call this one as an x1 and an x1 x1 and x1 transpose, x2 then x2 transpose, and so on, and then summing up all of them together, and then this is called the gram matrix. But in the case of a covariance matrix, we compute so we just sum up all the data items feature vector into a single vector, and then divide it by n, which is an average vector or global centroid, right? So this is a global centroid U, and then we just subtract this U, this mu or centroid from each of our column vectors, right? And then this guy is x1 minus mu, x1 minus mu transpose, and so on, right? So yeah, and then divided by n. So this is the definition of our covariance matrix, right? And then if we okay, so this covariance matrix is telling us like which direction is a little bit is stretched in our data set or distribution, or which direction is not stretched much. So it's basically like input matrix used to compute the PCA, right? So if we have a data like this, then if we compute the covariance matrix, and also it's a Gaussian distribution, and then our contour is something like this, right? Okay, and then it means, if we use like that covariance matrix inverse in this place, okay, in this place, and then it is indicating that, okay, so suppose we have these 2 points and this point, so this guy is the first principal component and the second one, right? And so along this direction, so this Euclidean distance is decomposed into these two, right? But this direction is like normalized or squeezed into much smaller distance, right? And this distance is like normalized by this sharp kind of mountain shape, right? Sharp decreasing pattern along this direction. And so once performing the Mahalanobis distance based on this covariance inverse from this data distribution or data covariance matrix, and then this distance gets smaller and this distance gets larger, and so this squared and this squared will be our Mahalanobis distance. I mean the sum of these two. Okay, so it means intuitively it means along this direction, even if it's located really close to each other, and then their distance gets exaggerated, and along that direction, even if the 2 points gets relatively far apart, but if because our data really is distributed in a way that they are stretched along this direction a lot, and so even if it gets farther along that direction, we don't penalize or we don't consider it as having like large distance. So I mean, we just consider it as having a small distance. Okay, so that is kind of intuitive understanding of this Mahalanobis distance. Does it make sense? 이해 가나요? 오늘따라 강의하는데 다들 표정이 좀 포카페이스인 것 같은데. 이전 수업도 좀 그러긴 했는데. 네, 하여튼 뭐 한글로 조금만 더 설명을 하면 이제 뭐 하여튼 요점과 요점의 유클리디안 디스턴스는 그냥 이거잖아요. 그러면 이제 뭐 유클리디안 디스턴스는 각 축으로 이렇게 해갖고 이거 제곱 한 다음에 더한 다음에 루트 취하면 그게 디스턴스가 나오잖아요, 그죠? 근데 이제 이게 이 디스턴스는 또 이게 약간 프린시플 컴포넌트 이렇게 하면 뭐 코베런스 뭐 다 분해하면 뭐 프린시플 컴포넌트 뭐 다 나오고 그러거든요. 그러면 이제 이쪽으로 뭐 두 개 이제 프린시플 엑시즈가 이렇게 나오고, 이제 또 퍼스트 엑시스로는 이제 확 그 저기 아이겐 밸류가 크고 이쪽으로는 작고, 그러면 이거 분의 1만큼이 되는 거라서 코베런스 매트릭스의 인버스가 하는 역할이. 그래서 여기가 만약에 3이고 뭐 예를 들면 여기가 1이다 아이겐 밸류가, 그러면 실제 우리가 가지는 이 디스턴스를 우리의 코베런스 매트릭스가 가지는 아이겐 벡터들의 방향 성분으로 쟤네들을 다 분해를 저렇게 해놓으면 뭐 이런 이제 만들어지잖아요. 이런 직각삼각형이. 그럼 여기가 원래 뭐 5고 여기가 뭐 2다. 그러면 이게 실제로는 5 나누기 3, 요게 짧아지고요. 그 다음에 이 2는 여기가 1이라고 그랬나요? 그럼 2는 그대로 있어야겠네요. 그럼 여기가 2 이렇게 돼서 실제로 하여튼 이거 제곱의 디스턴스가 된다는 거예요. 이게 말라노비스 디스턴스의 기본적인 개념이거든요. 코헤런스 매트릭스를 뭐 이렇게 아이겐 디컴포지션을 하면 이게 이제 스펙트럴 디컴포지션에 의해서 여기가 이제 아이겐 벡터들이 다 수직하게 나오고, 여기에 이제 이게 3, 1 뭐 이런 식으로 나오고, 그 다음에 이게 이제 V1, V2, V1, V2 이렇게 나와서 이거 인버스는 여기 분의 1, 여기 분의 1 해갖고 뭐 이렇게 되는 건데, 하여튼 이거는 뭐 선형대수니까 아이겐 디컴포지션이나 뭐 PCA 뭐 이런 것들에 대한 강의를 좀 참고를 하면 될 것 같고, 어쨌건 중요한 건 이제 데이터가 이제 이쪽으로 쭉쭉 뻗어 있으니까 이쪽으로 뻗어 있는 게 자연스러운 현상이다 이거예요. 그러니까 이쪽으로 뻗어 있는 만큼, 저쪽으로 많이 뻗쳐져 있는 만큼 그쪽으로 이렇게 변화가 생긴다 하더라도 그거는 그렇게까지 큰 변화로 생각하지 말자는 거예요, 디스턴스를 계산할 때. 근데 우리 데이터의 디스트리뷰션으로 보면 이쪽으로는 잘 변화가 없는 것을 알 수가 있는 거죠. 이게 무슨 말이냐면, 이게 이제 뭐 그냥 키, 몸무게 이러면, 그러면 이제 예를 들면 뭐 170인데 70kg인 사람이랑, 그 다음에 이쪽으로 가면 둘 다 같이 늘어나는 거잖아요. 포지티브리 코릴레이티드 되어져 있는 변수니까. 185인 사람이 예를 들면 90kg인 사람이랑, 그럼 여기서 이제 유클리디안 디스턴스 이거 170 빼기 185의 제곱, 그 다음에 70 빼기 90의 제곱 한 다음에 더해갖고 이렇게 하는 거잖아요. 그쵸? 이때 이제 나오는 유클리디안 디스턴스가 있죠. 근데 예를 들면 이 사람에서 이쪽 거꾸로 데이터의 변화, 이렇게 데이터가 실제로 변화하는 어떤 그런 게 별로 발견이 되지 않는 방향으로 이제 간다는 건 뭐냐면, 몸무게, 키가 커졌는데 몸무게 이제 작아진 거예요. 그러니까 키가 175인데 몸무게는 예를 들면 뭐 60이다. 이 경우는 여기서 디스턴스를 재보면 여기서 5밖에 차이 안 나고 여기서 10밖에 차이 안 나죠. 여기서는 15, 여기서는 20이나 차이가 나는데, 근데 이게 이 위에 쪽 이 두 개의 벡터의 거리가 더 짧을 수 있다, 아니 더 멀게 계산이 될 수 있다는 거죠. 이게 이제 말라돔 디스턴스의 기본 개념이라는 거예요. 이걸 해주는 게 뭐 아이겐 디컴포지션을 통해서 이제 코베런스 매트릭스를 뭐 이렇게 하면은 뭐 이렇게 된다는 거죠. Okay, and then also this Mahalanobis distance and their related density or Gaussian distribution can be used for basically the density estimation of our data. Okay, so even before looking at or computing this Mahalanobis distance, if we compute this, let's model our data as a single Gaussian, and then similar to like a height and weight example. So in this case, so this is our Gaussian, right? In this case, so we can compute the density of an arbitrary point. So like given in this point, and then what is the density? It's a 0.05, and then what is the density over here? And it's a 0.007, for example. And then it means at this feature vector that has the density or that has the likelihood of observing that data item is having this amount of a probability, and having this feature like 190 centimeter and maybe 55 kilogram, and that's really rare case or really hard to find, right? So that is reflected in our density estimation and their estimated density value from this modeled Gaussian model. Okay, so in this manner we can use basically this density estimation to detect the outlier. So it is closely related to outlier detection. And so if we have many data points over here in our feature space, and then if we consider, if we model our data as some particular class of probability distribution, and then fit it or estimated the optimal parameters to model this particular class of probability distribution, and then given an arbitrary point, and then we can obtain this density value, and so we can detect the outlier that way, right? So it was part of maybe Andrew Young's machine learning course available in Coursera and so on. And then this also can be used in something called this out of distribution detection. Okay, out of distribution detection. Okay, out of distribution detection is the same as just an outlier detection. Okay, so this kind of thing can be used quite effectively in the following applications, such as so suppose our classifier was trained only based on maybe 3 particular classes, maybe cat and dog and person, and suppose these are the entire set of classes where our training data are obtained to train our model. Okay, and then suppose given this classifier, we have our classifier, and then suppose we give some image of maybe desk, maybe laptop. Okay, and in this case, since it was trained to classify among these 3 classes, it will anyways give us some of the logit value and the softmax probability distribution across or over all 3 classes, right? but it will not make sense to classify this laptop into one of these cat and dog and person, right? So in that case, it will be great if our model can say that, okay, this data item is not, I mean, is, yeah, if our classifier says, okay, so this data item is quite rare, which I didn't see much from their data patterns, and so I refuse to classify them into one of the known classes that I have. Okay, so in this case, okay, so this is, yeah, not belonging to any of these known classes, and so it is called this, yeah, we can claim it as out of distribution sample. Okay, so in this case, if our classifier can have this, yeah, has this kind of capability, and then yeah, it means we can detect out of distribution samples. Okay, so in this case, it was published in maybe yeah, last year's NIPS, and the main idea used in this paper is just Mahalanobis distance that we studied. Okay, so basically we just estimate our we just perform our density estimation or model our data as some single Gaussian or multimodal, I mean Gaussian mixture models, and then given a particular point, and then we measure its density value or likelihood or the probability of observing that particular input instance or input feature vector, and then if it is too low, and then we can just assert that or claim that this is an out of distribution sample, and thus I refuse to classify them. Okay. Yep. So it related. Yeah. It yeah, somehow, yeah, made the connection between this Mahalanobis distance and also some of the deep learning model. Yeah, I actually haven't read this paper, but I only know the title and know it is mainly used. Mainly using the Gaussian, I mean the Mahalanobis distance. So it will be, yeah, quite straightforward for you to read. So, yeah, so this simple technique can still be quite effective in modern research as well. Okay, and any questions so far? Okay, then let's finally move to the next topic called density-based clustering or DB-scan. And it's a quite old and traditional method. And yep, so it's density-based clustering. So yeah, it has many interesting example over here. So suppose we have these two-dimensional input features or data items in this manner, and then we want to perform the clustering on this data, and then yep, so this is one result when running the DB-scan algorithm as a clustering method for this data, and then here we can see that, I mean, the colored groups of points, like cyan, blue, and pink, and red, and green, those are the identified or obtained clusters. And we can also see that those black points, okay? So those black points turned out not to belong to any of computed clusters, okay? So that is main kind of distinction of this DB-scan algorithm. So yeah, from the perspective of a Gaussian mixture model and also k-means and many other clustering algorithms, it is basically partitioning method. By that I mean partitioning means, so we have maybe 100 data in total, and then each of 100 data items, and then each of the data items should belong to one of our clusters that we obtained. Okay, so there is no exceptions. Okay, but in this case, it allows such an exception that, okay, if some of these data points doesn't look like belonging to any of meaningful clusters, and then we try, yeah, we don't we don't try to merge them into existing clusters. Okay, so that way there are those unclustered data items as well as an output, as part of an output of a clustering algorithm. But in the case of k-means and also Gaussian mixture models and also hierarchical clustering, they are all partitioning based method, which means they will I mean there is no exception. Okay, so every data item should belong to some of these clusters, whether it is a hard clustering or soft clustering and so on, right? And also this dbScan algorithm and this dbScan I mean one of the one important aspect of this dbScan algorithm is that this clustering method is basically non-linear. So by that I mean the Gaussian mixture model and the k-means they cannot have this kind of clusters. Okay, so inside of one cluster we have another cluster, right? So we can think of some of the nonlinear decision boundary between the clusters. So in the case of Gaussian mixture model and also k-means, so we mentioned about this, right? So Voronoi diagram that works as a kind of partitioning method of the entire feature space with respect to the closest centroid, right? And so in this case, all the shapes will be kind of convex. Okay, so there is no concave part, which means like some clusters like this. So this is a one cluster and another cluster. Okay, so in this case, is this green set convex or not? So we studied about the requirement or definition of the convex set. If we choose the 2 point, any of the 2 points from our convex set, and then their interpolation, which is convex combination, should belong to the set, right? So in this case, like this point and this point and this point, all of them should belong to this set. Okay, so that is the requirement of this convex set. But in this case, we can intuitively understand that they are not satisfying the convex set, right? And so, so usually in the case of linear clustering method or linear classifier, the decision boundaries and each cluster is basically having the convex shape. But in this case, we can easily see that they are not convex. So if we choose this point and that point, and then the internal point is clearly belonging to a different cluster, right? And so it is not satisfying this convex set. And so in that case, it is basically viewed as a nonlinear clustering method. So none of these Gaussian mixture model and k-means can have this kind of shapes. Although hierarchical clustering can have this kind of shape. So let's remind us of what we studied about this k-means, hierarchical clusterings, about their linkage. So how can we obtain, what kind of linkage among 4 different linkage methods will give us this kind of shape? We had a single linkage and I barely remember, but complete linkage, centroid linkage, and so on, right? In this case, a single linkage one. Okay, among a set of clusters, we just find out the closest possible one to just put it into our cluster, right? So that is, I think, a single linkage. So in this case, single linkage based hierarchical clustering may have this kind of shape. But anyways, so that is main characteristic of this dbScan algorithm, and they can successfully perform the clustering on this complex shaped clusters as well. And let's see. I think he snips. It is a little bit difficult to find. I may have put the wrong keyword, but anyways, so if we have this kind of shape of our topology of our data, and then yeah, from that case, it may be reasonable to obtain the 3 clusters of that guy, and the single circle, right? And so that is certainly nonlinear one. And so yeah, someone actually performed the like this funny shaped topology, and also I think he was NIPS, but yeah, we have like this kind of point, and then yeah, we perform clustering on that, and then each character is obtained as a each of our clusters. Okay, so this nonlinear clustering and also nonlinear characteristic and also non-partitioning based clustering, which means some of these data may not belong to any of these clusters. Okay, so those characteristics are the ones of this DB scans. And so let me explain how it works. Okay, so it is called a density-based algorithm, and here it is similar to hierarchical clustering in a sense that they mainly use the distance or the similarity between the data items. So we don't actually need to feature vector representation originally, as long as we can define the pairwise similarity or the distance between any given 2 points. Okay, so like between the 2 social network users, their retweeting count or their sharing kind of frequency of sharing the other's post, and then that can be used as a similarity measure and so on, right? Okay. So here, DB scan start with the sum of the definition. So it has some core point and the border point, and the core point is really the point within the dense region. Okay, and let me look at the example. Yeah, let me show the example. So over here, mean point is 5, and then we need some specific radius in our feature space. Yeah, although in this case, I may be wrong, and because it may need a feature vector representation, because we need some radius properly defined in our feature space. So we have some threshold in terms of some Euclidean distance. Or maybe not, maybe not. So we can think of the threshold as maybe 3 as a retweeting count as our threshold, right? And so if the 2 users are like retweeting more than 3 times, and then we consider them as a neighborhood, okay? And also, in the case of a Euclidean space, Euclidean distances, and then given a particular point, and then we can think of maybe the radius of 1, and then we can think of this radius, and then the core point is those containing more than or equal to this number of neighbor points. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that way, since it contains at least 5 points within the radius of this circle, so that's why we call it as a core point. Okay, and then there is another type of a point defined as a border point, and the definition of this border point is, so we still consider the same same circle with the same radius of 1. Okay, in this case, inside of the circle, if there exists at least one core point, okay, and then this guy is a border point. But this border point doesn't need to be, this border point itself does not have at least 5 points inside of their own circle. Okay, so again, we have a clear definition of a core point, and then in the case of a border point, and then this point will have neighbor as a core point, but center that is a border point, and inside of the circle it doesn't have sufficiently many number of points. Okay, so in this case, this is really reflecting our intuition. So let's suppose we are really having a densely located data items over here in this region. So in this case, if we consider this a radius there, we can easily find many number of points, right? But what about this border point? In this case, up to this point, it is like core point, right? And then as a neighborhood, this point is inside of the circle, and it means if we draw the circle from here, and then this guy is found as a point inside of its own circle, right? So this is core point, right? So, but in this case, this point does not have sufficiently many points inside of their own circle, right? So in this case, it is called the border point, right? And 네.
보도 포인트는 코어 포인트로 분류되는 건가요?
네, 그 좋은 질문인데요. 그렇지 않고요. 나눠요. 네, 코어 포인트는 그러니까 자기 그 어떤 반지름 내의 원에 반지름 내의 원에 이제 어떤 특정한 숫자만큼의 포인트를 가지면 이제 코어 포인트라고 하고요. 근데 자기 원 내에는 그렇지 못해요. 그러니까 자기 원 내에는 그만큼을 가지지 못하지만 그래도 자기 원 내에 하나라도 코어 포인트가 있는 애를 이제 보더 포인트라고 해서, 이게 보더 포인트가 더 릴렉스드 된 어떤 데피니션 같아서 이제 코어는 보더다, 보더 포인트다, 뭐 이렇게 생각할 수도 있겠지만 그렇진 않고, 여기서는 두 개를 나누어서 코어 포인트가 아닌 어떤 포인트들을 우리가 보더 포인트로.
질문은 보도 포인트 안에 코어 포인트가 다른 클래스들이 있을 수 있잖아요.
다른 클러스터에 속하는 애들이요?
예, 그러니까 만약에 A 클러스터에 속하는 코어 포인트가 있을 수 있고 B 코어에 속하는 클러스터 코어 포인트가 있을 수 있는데, 그럼 그 보도 포인트는 클러스터가 어디로 가게 돼요?
이게 그러니까 아직 우리가 여기서 클러스터를 어떻게 정의하느냐 혹은 어떻게 구하느냐를 아직 논하지 않았기 때문에 그런 경우는 기본적으로는 안 생긴다고 보면 돼요. 여기서 정의한 어떤 알고리즘 혹은 휴리스틱한 그 방법론에 의하면 그런 뭔가 컨플릭팅하는 그런 애매한 경우는 이제 생기지 않는. 그래서 그 뒤에 좀 더 설명을 하면 거기서 또 질문을 또 하면 될 것 같아요. Any other questions? Okay, and then those points that doesn't satisfy this requirement of a core and border point is called a noisy point, noise point, which means for the noisy point over here, this is a noise point. So inside of it's a circle, maybe circle is around here, and then it only contains one of these data item. But let's see, let's just remove this guy, and then there are many other points over here, and then this guy is not a core point, right? So it has fewer number of points, and also it doesn't have any core points as neighborhood, and so this guy is a noise point. Okay, and then now let's define some of the related concepts or notions over here. Directly density reachable. So let's read through the definition. An object Q or data item Q is directly densely reachable from another point Q, another point P, where P is a core point, and the distance between Q and P is less than 1 or epsilon. Okay. By the way, epsilon neighborhood is meaning that their distance is less than 1 or short, yeah, closer than 1. Okay. And so this directly densely reachable is not, one important aspect about this directly densely reachability is they are not symmetric. They are not necessarily symmetric. So, yeah. So here in this example, suppose our mean point is maybe 4, and then for this guy, it has 4 points, right? So this guy is core point, right? And then let's consider this Q over here, and then it has the neighbor as a core point, right? So in this case, Q is directly densely reachable from P. Okay, so you can imagine like we always start with the core point, as we will see in the detailed algorithm of this DB scan. But we always start with core point. So from this core point as a starting point, this Q is reachable by this core point, okay, as a starting point. But here the question is P a directly densely reachable from Q? So it is not, because Q is not a core point, because when considering the radius centered at the point Q, and then Q, we can see that Q is not core point, right? So here, if Q is directly densely reachable from P, and then this P as a starting point, that should be a core point. Okay, so here Q is directly densely reachable from P, but P is not directly densely reachable from Q, because Q is not a core point. Okay, and then we studied about the notion of directly densely reachable, and then now let's look at the notion of this density reachability without without the word directly. Okay, so what's the meaning of this density reachable? So in this case, we have Q and P over here, and Q is density reachable from P. Okay, and then its meaning is we can allow some multi-hops as the core point to reach Q starting from P. Okay, so again, so here Q is not directly densely reachable from P because centered at P. So basically P is a core point, but Q is outside of the circle, so Q is not directly densely reachable. But Q is a density reachable because, okay, so this is our starting point as a core point, and then if we can find some sequence. So P is a core point, and then consider it's a directly density reachable point, okay, as a kind of intermediate point. And then let's see, maybe this guy or this guy, okay, and this guy, is it still a core point? Yes, it is, because it has a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so this is another core point that is directly densely reachable from P, right? So let's call this as a P prime, and P prime is directly densely reachable from P, and this is also a core point. And so we can, we are allowed to go further, okay? And from P prime, this Q is now within the radius of an epsilon or 1, and so this guy is directly densely reachable from this intermediate point. And so if there exists this kind of sequence from P and P hat and Q, and then this Q is called densely reachable from P. Any questions? 네.
메인 포인트는 자기 자신을 제외하고
아 이게요 좀 나도 이게 슬라이드가 좀 애매한데 좀 애매해요 이게. 근데 좀 인터넷 좀 별로 좋지 않은 걸 내가 갖고 왔나 봐요.
실제 사용해 보면 자기 자신을 포함하는 거.
네, 근데 이제 보통 우리가 네이버드를 따질 때는 자기 자신을 제외하고 따지거든요. 네, 그래서 이게 좀 이상한데 일단 개념은 뭐 알겠죠? 어떤 정해진 어떤 숫자만큼 그 이상을 포함을 해야 그 덴시티가 이제 말 그대로 덴스하다라고 이제 생각하는 거예요. 네, 그래서 자기 그 엡실론이라는 레디어스 안에 그 포인트 이상 개수만큼이 있으면 그게 이제 코어 포인트고 하여튼 무조건 스타팅 포인트는 이제 스타팅은 코어 포인트에서부터 시작하다 이게 좀 중요한 거예요. 여기서 쭉쭉쭉 코어 포인트들을 우리가 징검다리 삼아 갈 수 있는 어떤 포인트들 이제 그 포인트는 그러면 이 스타팅 포인트 그러니까 가장 오리지널 스타팅 포인트로부터 density reachable 하다가 표현을 하는 거예요. And still this density reachability is not symmetric one because even if Q is directly density reachable from P but not vice versa because yeah can we start with the Q? Q is not a core point, right? Q is probably some border point, right? At least this Q, if it is a density reachable from some core point, and then it will be at least a border point. Okay, it will be either core point and core point or the border point. Okay, but not a noise point. Okay, and then now the last concept or the last notion of density connectivity. Okay, so in the previous case we talked about the density reachability, but here we talk about the density connectivity or density connected. Okay, not density reachable, but density connected. Okay, so if P and Q are density connected, but not a density reachable, in that case you can think of this figure. So P and Q are density, like this point, maybe this point and this point are density connected if there exists some common starting point as a core point. Okay, so there should exist some common starting point as a core point, and then from that common starting point, if Q is density reachable from that common starting point, and if the Q is density reachable from that common point, okay, in that case P and Q are called, they are density connected. Does it make sense? Okay, so if they share some common parent or common starting point as a core point, they are density reachable from the same common core point, and then these 2 points of P and Q are called density connected. So here in the case of density connectedness or density connectivity is now a symmetric measure. So if P and Q are density connected, and then Q and P are density connected, because we just need the common starting point as a core point that can kind of density reach the P and Q. Okay?
P랑 Q는
네.
코어 포인트가 아니어도 되는 거죠?
네. 코어 포인트가 아니어도 돼. 근데 이게 코어 포인트가 이것도 역시 그러니까 코어 혹은 이제 보더 포인트여야 하죠. 네. So now is we are ready to define the clustering algorithm used in DBScan. So intuitively, let's let's just directly go to, or let's just directly describe how this DBScan algorithm works. So given our data items, and also given the mean point and the epsilon as our hyperparameters, or some predefined parameters to run this DB-scan algorithm. And then for each data item, we can identify whether that point is a core or border, core and border and noise point, right? So we can easily determine whether each point is one of these three categories, right? And then from this we just randomly choose one core point, because that can work. That is the only possible point to start with, right? So only the core point can work as a starting point. Okay, so suppose this guy is some of our core point. So it should be 4, I think. Yeah, it's also considering the case of containing itself, but usually I think when considering the neighborhood or neighboring point, then epsilon neighborhood is excluding itself. But anyways, so this is one of the core points. So from this randomly chosen core point, we just start with this density, reachability, and so on, right? And so those points, whether they are core or border point, we just put these 4 points into this cluster, starting with this starting point. Okay, and then let's see, for this point, is it a core point or not? Maybe it is not a core point, so we don't continue further from that point, because that is just a border point. But among these 4 points, for each of our core points, okay, so let's see, this guy is another core point, and then for these points, so we just put them into our cluster. Okay, so that's how we kind of greedily expand one single cluster. Okay, and then it's like I don't recall the exact algorithm or kind of data structures related to this kind of algorithm, but it's implemented using some data structure of what? I think it's using stack. Does it make sense? So we put this guy into our stack, and then in our stack we have only 1 point, and then we just put it back. We just get it out of this stack, and then retrieve its neighbor point. Okay, and then we just removed it because we just get it out, and then those light blue points will be put into our stack. Okay, and so here we just put it back. I mean, get it out, and then for its point, we check whether it's a core point or not. If it is core point, and then we retrieve its neighbor. Okay, and then we removed it, and then but instead, if it is a core point, and if we find it's a neighbor point, and then we also put them back into our stack, right, and so on. So it's like a kind of depth first search, right? But we can implement it, similar to like a breadth first search, right? So for each of the 4, we just retrieve their neighbor points, and then check whether they are core or not. And then for those core points, and then we list up, and then we just scan through their neighbors of each of these core points, and so on. So we can also implement this algorithm as a breadth first search, I think. Okay, so that's how we form the cluster. And then if there is no remaining points to continue this extension or expansion, and then that's when to stop. and stop growing this cluster, and that is our single cluster. Okay, and then for the remaining points, okay, suppose after this process, so yeah, maybe these points are identified as a single cluster, and then we have some of the other remaining points, and then we just choose another random core points, and then we do the same process. Okay, so that's how we perform this DB scan. And this DB scan, yeah, is actually following this algorithm or this kind of heuristic, and then it will follow or it will satisfy these nice properties. So so consider a particular cluster C, and this cluster C contains the list of the data items, and that set of data items is called D. Okay, and then from C, let's choose like P and Q, and then maybe P is belonging to C, and Q is any arbitrary point. But if Q is densely reachable from P, which belongs to the current cluster, and then this cluster C should also belong to cluster C, right? So that means if some point is densely reachable from some core point that is already belonging to a cluster C, and then that point should also belong to our cluster. So if that point is densely reachable, and then we will just include them into our cluster. Okay, so that way we will form the cluster as large as possible, as the maximum size of a cluster in terms of this density reachability. And in terms of the connectivity, so if P and Q are belonging to the cluster C, and then they should share the same ancestor, or there should exist same starting point as a core point, same starting core point. Okay, so that is the connectivity. So that means, so if we identify this as a single cluster, and then you choose any of the 2 points, like this guy or this guy and that guy and so on, for any given pair of the points, and then you should be able to find always the common ancestor or common starting point as a core point, still belonging to the same cluster. Okay, so in that sense, any points are densely connected to each other. So in this case, let's consider like this case. Yeah, we have many points over here, and suppose we start from one of the core point over here, and then we finally reach some border point over here, and then we also reach some other border point over here. Okay, and even if we choose any of these 2 border points, or maybe those points far apart from each other, and then we should be able to always find some common core point that can densely reach that point and also densely reach that point. Okay, so that is the meaning of this connectivity. Although we don't prove it, but intuitively I think it's satisfied when following this DB scan algorithm. Any questions? 네.
클러스터 하나에 포함된 보도 포인트가
네.
다른 클러스터의 보도 포인트는 될 수 없나요?
그러니까 이제 좋은 질문이네요. 뭐 이만한 거에 얘가 딱 보도 포인트다. 그래서 사실 여기 코어에서 쭈루룩 가면 여기까지 또 올 수 있는데 그럴 수 있겠죠? 여기 딱 코어 포인트 하나, 여기 코어 포인트 하나 이렇게 해갖고 딱 걸쳐져 있는. 네, 그럴 수 있고 이 경우는 그러니까 얘를 누가 차지하냐, 누가 먼저 형성이 되느냐, 어떤 클러스터 그거에 따라서 달라질 것 같아요.
나중에 형성된 클러스터에 포함이 되는 거예요.
처음에 형성되는 클러스터에. 왜냐하면 이제 그러네요. 그럼 여기서 뭔가 맥시멀러티 같은 거를 만족을 할 수가 있나? 일단 알고리즘 상으로는 이제 이게 그리디하게 이제 클러스터 첫 번째 거 먼저 찾고 그 다음에 거기서 약간 품절된 포인트들은 우리가 제외하고 나머지들 중에서 또 이걸 하는 거거든요. 그러면 이제 얘는 이제 이쪽으로 귀속이 됐고 그 다음엔 이쪽에서 뭔가 코어 포인트에서 시작을 하면 얘는 이제 이미 있는 포인트가 아니기 때문에 네, 얘는 그러면 포함을 못 하는 거죠. 얘는 못 보는 거죠. 여기서 끝나는 거죠. 근데 그러면 그 경우에 그럼 이 맥시멀러티를 만족을 못 하네요. 덴시리 리처블. 덴시리 리처블 하면 이게 같은 클러스터에 속해야 되는데. 모르겠는데요. 쉬는 시간에 한번 찾아보죠.
그러면 density reachable한 어떤 특정한 코어 포인트에 대해서 density reachable한 점들은 모두 한 클러스터 취급을 하는 거죠.
네.
그러면 그 점들이 이제 density connectivity 한 거.
density connected. 네. 그러니까 density reachable 두 포인트 간의 density reachable은 둘 중에 하나는 하여튼 코어 포인트여서 출발을 하는 거죠. 그래서 이렇게 간다는 거고, density connected는 이제 두 포인트가 둘 다 코어 포인트가 아닌데도 불구하고 어떤 그 같은 코어 포인트에서부터 걔네들까지 density reachable 하면 그러면 이제 두 포인트는 density connected라고 이야기를 하는 거죠. 그래서 아까 여기 있는 예제처럼 네, 여기 있는 얘랑은 이제 density connected지만 둘 중에 누구도 이제 코어 포인트는 아닌 거죠. 근데 이런 게 어떻게 되지? Okay, so yeah, let's check again about this issue. So I think I explained probably all of them that I wanted to discuss about this DB scan. So these are some of the pseudocode of the DB scan. We randomly select a point, and yeah, this one should be core point. Yeah, this one should be core point. And then we start to form the cluster starting from that point. Okay, and then if P is also the border point, and then no points are densely reachable from P, and DB scan visits the next point. Okay, so if it is a border point, and then we leave it as it is, and then we move to another core point. So basically, all the starting points to form a particular cluster should be always the core point. right? And DB scan is not perfect. And so in this case of data, topology of our data, and then intuitively, we should be able to find out this single, loosely, loosely connected, or kind of low density of a cluster and a little bit high density of a cluster, and then we have another cluster over here, but as an overlapping cluster, we have these three clusters. Okay. And by the way, let's consider this kind of situation. And can we obtain these four different clusters by using Gaussian mixture model? So again, even though the colors are not differentiated here, but we have one big cluster and the second, third, and fourth. Can we identify those clusters from the Gaussian mixture model? Yes, it is. Because we have relatively low height of a mountain that has a wide radius corresponding to the first mountain. And then we have really sharp and really high mountain over here. And three of different mountains over here, right? And then, so again, as I mentioned, similar to like classifying a point based on LDA. So we have different mountains and then manipulate or adjust their height based on their prior value, prior probability, right? And then we choose the cluster that has the maximum height of the corresponding mountain, right? And so if we have a really big and sharp mountain, small mountain, but really high mountain over there and over here and over here, and then we can properly cluster them into these four different clusters. Right, but here in this case, in the case of DB scan, in DB scan, it cannot properly handle or identify this different clusters with a different density from each other. So, in order to find out this kind of cluster, we have to use our predefined parameters of an epsilon and also the minimum number of points to define a core point as relatively high value, right? Because inside of this maybe radius of 1, for example, and then we can see relatively large number of data points. So we can set relatively high value or large value as our mean point or as a threshold, right? But if we use that threshold at the same threshold over here, and then all of these points will be treated or considered as noise points because we just use the same density or assume the same density, right? So the main limitation of this DB scan cannot handle this varying density. Okay, and also another kind of hurdle or the challenges of this DB scan is that this maximum the minimum number of points to define the core point, that is one of the predefined parameter to determine. But another parameter to determine is the radius itself. Okay, so radius can be defined as 1 or 2 or 10 and so on. Okay, so radius and the number of minimum points to be included in that radius of a circle. So those two are the hyperparameters to determine. Okay, so in the case of DB scan, we don't specify the number of clusters, right? So we don't predefine the number of clusters, but instead we need to specify the two other parameters over here. Okay, so that is really the difficulty, the main main drawback of running this DB scan. And so these are the different algorithmic results from using different parameters. And then how can we determine this epsilon or the radius and the number of minimum points? Okay. So it is not perfect. And if you are familiar with the elbow method used to determine the number of optimal clusters for k-means, okay, and then if this elbow point is clearly appearing, and then yeah, this elbow method can be useful, but in general we don't have a clear elbow in our graph, right? So that is the problem. So here the same limitation still exists, but yeah, let's see how we can at least try to find, or what information to draw as an analysis of an optimal epsilon and mean point. So here, because we have these two parameters to determine, so we simply specify one in advance. So it's like sequential process of like, suppose we just set epsilon as 1, okay. And then we don't start with this epsilon, but we basically start with the mean point first, okay. So let's consider the mean point as maybe 4, okay. And then we can kind of think of the distance to the fourth nearest neighbor. So for example, for this point, this guy, they seem to have all the same distance value, but suppose this one is the closest one, second, and the third, and the fourth one. So this is the fourth neighbor, and we can consider its distance, okay. And let's consider this point, and then maybe first and second, and maybe the third and fourth, right? And then we just bring this distance, okay. So in this manner, for each point we consider its fourth nearest neighbor, and then just compute or consider their corresponding distance, okay. And then we just sort them out from the shortest or the closest one to the farthest one, okay. So this point is the one that has the shortest distance to its own fourth nearest neighbor, and maybe this one is having this distance as a fourth nearest neighbor, right? And then we can think of this kind of graph, okay. And then in this graph we can kind of see some kind of elbow pattern, or like this kind of smooth or slow increase. So in this case, what does that mean? Among the maybe 2800, from 0 to 2800, their distance gap, or their difference of distance to the fourth nearest neighbor is not that much, okay. So it means those 2800 points will have relatively same distance to the fourth nearest neighbor, right? But for the other points, they may have really large variance in terms of the distance to the fourth nearest neighbor, okay. So in this case, we just cut over here and use this as our EPS, okay. And then what does that mean? We consider around 2800 points as core point, right? And then maybe 200, remaining 200 points might be, some of them will be core border point, but some of them maybe just noise point, okay. So that's how we kind of determine the epsilon value when fixing this mean point as a particular value. And then we can also change this 4 as 3 and maybe 2 or 5 and so on, and then we can respectively draw this graph, and then among one of them, I mean among many, one may have really clear kind of an elbow point, right? And then we can choose that corresponding mean point value and their kind of epsilon value. Okay, so here the main intuition or main idea is that, so if we cut over here as 1,000, and then out of 3,000 data points, we only have 1,000 core point, and it means majority of our data item will be treated as noise, right? And so our even if we want to obtain the clustering, I mean clustering result that contains most of our data items, but in this case, due to this two strict kind of parameters that are predetermined, and then our clusters may not contain or cover much of our data items. Okay. So I think that's it for DB scan. Any questions? 네.
질문 좀 이상할 수도 있는데
네.
언슈퍼바이스드 클러스터링에서
언슈퍼바이즈 클러스터링이요? 네.
그럼 DB 스캔보다 정답은 없는데 DB 스캔이 거의 대부분의 경우 제일 좋은 성능을 보여주는 건가요?
네. 그렇진 않고요. 이게 DB 스캔은 사실 내가 가르치긴 했지만 뭐 옛날에 강의 자료 만들어둔 걸 일단 가르치긴 했는데 잘 안 써요 요새는. 그리고 저기
뭘 쓰나요?
네? 요새요? K민즈가 여전히 쓰이고.
K민즈?
네. K민즈. 왜요? 너무 오래된 알고리즘인.
안 쓰는 이유를 좀
이거 안 쓰는 이유요? 네. 이게 안 쓰는 이유가 뭐냐면, 기본적으로 이 density based clustering이잖아요. 말 그대로 density를 통해서 뭐 directly density reachable, 뭐 core point, 뭐 이게 다 density를 정의를 한 거잖아요. epsilon neighborhood, 그러니까 epsilon이라는 반지름 내에 이제 몇 개가 이제 데이터 포인트가 있느냐, 뭐 이걸로 다 정의를 하는 거잖아요. 근데 이게 뭐 아까 이런 뭐 나이스한 이그젬플도 많고 한데, 이게 다 하여튼 이제 어떤 전제가 일단 기본적으로 들어가 있냐면, 혹은 이제 대부분 어떤 경우냐면 다 이제 low dimensional 데이터에서의 케이스가 돼요. 지금 다 2D 혹은 3D에서나 뭐 이걸 우리가 이렇게 실제로 눈으로 볼 수가 있는 거잖아요. 근데 이제 우리는 이제 굉장히 이제 디멘전이 큰 데이터를 다루잖아요. 뭐 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, 100만 뭐 이렇게 디멘전은 굉장히 크고, 그랬을 때 이제 굉장히 하이 디멘셔널 피처 스페이스에서의 어떤 그 클러스터링을 하는 것은 좀 뭐 잘 안 돼요. 왜 잘 안 되냐면, 뭔가 이렇게 그러니까 그 하이 디멘셔널 스페이스 우리가 눈으로 보기는 어렵지만, 거기서 뭔가 데이터가 명확하게 다 이렇게 모여져 있는 그 데이터의 클라우드라고 해야 될까요? 그런 게 잘 없어요. 그러니까 그게 약간은 하이 디멘셔널 데이터에서는 우리 데이터 아이템들이 대충 어떻게 생겼냐면, 약간 우리가 이제 밤하늘에 이제 별을 보면은 별이 이렇게 듬성듬성 돼 있잖아요. 거기서 어떤 클러스터도 잘 안 보이잖아요. 대충 그렇게 생겼어요. 하이 디멘셔널 쪽에서. 그리고 이제 왜 그러냐 하면, 뭐 내가 이렇게 꼭 이렇게 뭐 단정지어서 이야기를 하는 것은 뭐 과학적이진 않아요. 뭐 그런 데이터도 있을 수 있어요, 당연히. 그런 데이터도 있을 수 있지만, 기본적으로 이게 다 뭐랑 연결이 되냐면, 아마 우리가 뭐 좀 초반에 이제 강의에서 얘기했던 이제 curse of dimensionality라는 것과 좀 연결이 많이 돼요. 그러니까 이제 curse of dimensionality는 기본적으로 디멘전이 하나 늘어나면, 이제 뭐 디시전 바운더리도 그만큼 뭐 예측을 좀 어느 정도 잘 하고, 뭐 여러 가지 뭐 뭔가 좀 잘 하려면 데이터가 디멘전이 늘어난 만큼 그거에 비례해서 기하급수적으로 조금 어느 정도 데이터 숫자가 좀 받쳐줘야 된다는 거예요. 그러면 이제 디멘전이 늘어나면 늘어난 만큼, 디멘전이 하나 늘어났다 그러면 뭐 데이터가 10배 더 많아지고, 디멘전이 하나 더 늘어났다 그러면 100배 더 많아지고, 아니면 그 지수승이 뭐 2배라고 치면 좀 이렇게 하이 덴시티 리전이 잘 없어요, 사실. 그렇기 때문에 이런 덴시티 기반의 클러스터링 알고리즘이 내 생각에는 잘 안 쓰여요. 뭐 해도 파라미터 적당히 잡아서 해도 잘 안 나오고, 좀 뭐 그런 거죠.
근데 교수님이 하신 말씀은
네.
DB 스캔이 안 되는 이유라기보다는 그냥 요즘 데이터셋에 대해서
네.
그냥 unsupervised 클러스터링이 안 되는 이유처럼 들리는데
K민지 같은 경우 오히려 더 잘 될 수 있어요. 그러니까 물론 이제 데이터가 애초에 그 어떤 스트롱한 클러스터에 해당하는 그런 이제 클러스터 스트럭처 아니면 패턴이 아예 없으면 뭐 뭘 해도 안 되겠죠. K민지를 해도 당연히 안 되고, 그러니까 유니폼리 디스트리뷰티드 된 데이터 완전히 이제 어떤 그냥 그러니까 아주 어떤 클러스터도 없이 이제 듬성듬성 데이터가 딱 이렇게 있다. 그러면 뭐 K민지든 뭐든 해도 잘 안 되는 건 맞지만, 근데 이제 그게 좀 정도의 차이가 있는 거거든요. 정도의 차이가 있어서 이제 뭐 예를 들면 우리가 또 뒤에서도 이제 배우겠지만 데이터가 대충 하이 디멘전 스페이스를 이제 이걸 PCA로 이제 2D 프로젝션을 한 결과인데 대충 하이 디멘전에서 이렇게 생겼어요. 이게 여기서 뭐가 좀 나눠진 어떤 클러스터가 보이겠어요. 그러니까 이게 좀 애매한 거예요. 거기서 뭔가 클러스터링을 하기가. 그러니까 이게 K민지로 어떻게 좀 구획을 혹은 이제 리전을 보로노이 다이어그램을 통해서 이렇게 땅 따먹기를 하듯이 이렇게 나누면 그래도 뭔가 그나마 좀 여기 조금 더 모여 있고 저기 조금 더 모여 있고 그 사이는 조금 이렇게 좀 이런 클러스터 간의 경계가 보이고 뭐 이런 것들을 이제 K민지 같은 걸로는 찾을 수가 있는데 그나마. 근데 이제 이런 DB 스캔 같은 경우는 아까 얘기했던 것처럼 그 민 포인트라든가 그 이제 레디어스에 해당하는 그 엡실론 같은 값들이 아까 그런 그래프가 이게 하여튼 이런 식으로 안 나오고 그냥 스무드하게 이렇게 되는 거예요. 그렇기 때문에 거기서는 저런 파라미터 값을 어느 정도 좀 성능이 잘 나올 수 있는 어떤 만족스러운 클러스터를 내줄 수 있는 저 파라미터를 찾는 것 자체가 이제 뭐 굉장히 하여튼 좀 힘든 일이고 그냥 그럴 바에 그냥 K민지 같은 거를 쓰는 게 차라리 더 나을 수 있고요. 그 다음에 뭐 우리가 또 디멘전 리덕션을 또 뭐 이런저런 방법론들을 좀 빨리 배워야 되긴 하는데 EM에 조금 많이 딜레이가 돼갖고 좀 거시기 하긴 하지만 let's 보자. 이 흑백의 그림이 있어야 되는데 흑백 흑백. 네, 그러면 이게 이제 PCA. 그러니까 PCA는 뭐 얘는 잘못한 게 없어요. 그러니까 오리지널 스페이스의 디스턴스를 가장 잘 보존할 수 있는 두 개의 축을 찾아서 나타냈더니 이렇게 보인 건데 이제 TSN이라 하면 똑같은 데이터가 이 아래 거는 그냥 우리가 무시하고 이제 이런 식으로 뭔가 어느 정도는 그러니까 여기서 이제 2D에다가 density 베이스드 클러스터링이든 K민지를 하든 만약에 이 2D로 디멘션을 줄여갖고 여기다가 클러스터링을 하면 클러스터링 결과는 굉장히 잘 나올 거예요. 잘 나온다는 거는 명확하게 얘네들이 우리 눈에도 보이잖아요. 하나, 둘, 셋. 여기는 뭐 여기 이런 놈들이 좀 어떻게 될지 모르지만 여기 잘린다면 뭐 대충 보이잖아요. 근데 사실 이제 우리 하이 디멘전 스페이스는 대충 이렇게 생겼다는 거죠. 그래서 여기서는 좀 어떻게 좀 클러스터링을 하기가 좀 굉장히 힘들다는 거고, 그럼 TSN이는 왜 동일한 데이터를, 이건 동일한 엠리스트 데이터를 다 비주얼라이즈를 2D로 한 것이고, 여기 TSN이는 왜 그러면은 이렇게 좀 뭔가 이런 거를 어디서 만들어낸 거냐, 같은 데이터를. 그러니까 이게 애초에 이제 디멘전을 우리가 많이 줄이게 되면 거기서 이제 발생되는 이제 디스토션이 상당히 많은데, 그 디스토션이 사실 그러니까 어떻게 보면 이 디멘전 리덕션은 뭐 나중에 얘기를 하겠지만 이제 100디멘전을 2차원으로 줄인다. 그러면 이 100디멘전 상에서 그 어떤 보존되던 정보 혹은 거기에 포함되던 정보가 한 2차원으로 줄였으니까 우리가 이제 그 중에 2%만 유지하는 거예요. 98%의 정보는 소실 혹은 변질이 되는 거죠. 그러니까 이것도 변질, 저것도 변질, 다 똑같은 변질이에요. 근데 이제 이거는 이제 변질을 할 바에는 좀 뭔가 좀 변질을 좀 클러스터가 좀 어느 정도 이게 맞든 틀리든 이게 좀 그래도 말이 되는 클러스터든 아니든 조금 더 말이 되는 식으로, 그러니까 좀 더 명확한 클러스터 구조가 좀 나타나도록 디멘전 리덕션을 수행하자. 어차피 정보의 손실이 될 거라면 오리지널 그 정보를 고지고대로 나타내기보다는 우리가 어차피 정보의 손실을 감수할 거, 98%의 정보의 손실이나 변질을 감수할 거라면 그거를 이렇게 애초에 별로 스트롱한 클러스터가 없는데도 불구하고 그걸 이렇게 그나마 좀 보이는 그 클러스터 간의 경계를 확 좀 과장을 하는 식으로 정보를 변질하자. 뭐 약간 이런 식으로 동작하는 게 TSN이거든요. 근데 애초에 우리의 스페이스는 뭐 이렇게 생겨서 이제 좀 하여튼 약간은 좀 하여튼 별 아까 얘기했던 것처럼 은하수처럼 아니, 그러니까 뭐 우리가 밤하늘에 보는 그런 식으로 거기서 뭔가 클러스터를 찾으려고 하는 것과 같아서 이제 거기서 이제 스트롱하게 어떤 딱 이제 덴슬리 커넥티드된 그런 스트롱한 그런 어떤 패턴을 가진 클러스터가 잘 없다. 그리고 그게 하이 디멘셔널일 때는 그런 게 리스키가 더 어렵다. 왜냐하면 그만큼 데이터가 빽빽히 채워져 있으면 우리가 덴시티 에스티메이션을 하는 과정이나 뭐 이런 과정들에서 딱 그 어디에 밀집되어 있는가가 딱 눈에 보일 텐데 어차피 밀집이 되어 있는 부분도 어차피 데이터가 그렇게 많이 없기 때문에 우리가 그러니까 거기서 나타난 것도 다른 곳에 비해서 더 훨씬 더 스트롱한 어떤 더 스트롱한 덴시티가 그렇게까지 그 어떤 굉장히 스트롱한 어떤 눈으로 보기에 명확한 그런 식으로 안 나타난다. 하여튼 그래서 그거 관련해서는 또 이야기를 했는지 모르겠는데 또 이런 거 그러니까 뭐 이런 굉장히 디멘전이 높은 경우에는 그 난리니어한 디시전 바운더리니 뭐 아까 뭐 이렇게 꼭 이렇게 꼬부라져 있고 뭐 이런 것도 사실 별로 필요 없어요. 좀 필요 없다는 게 좀 예를 들면 이제 텍스트 클래시피케이션 뭐 예를 들면 어떤 주어진 다큐먼트를 백오버즈 벡터로 나타내고 그거를 기반으로 타픽 클래시피케이션 혹은 센티멘트 클래시피케이션을 하겠다. 뭐 아니면 타픽 클래시피케이션은 뭐 이걸로 뭐 정치, 경제, 뭐 과학 뭐 이런 걸로 클래시피케이션 하는 경우는 그런 경우 이제 뭐 난리니어 SVM이니 뭐 그래서 뭐 커널 SVM이니 뭐 하여튼 난리니어한 뭐가 들어간 뭔가 이제 복잡한 클래시파이어를 쓰는 것보다 오히려 리니어 클래시파이어를 쓰는 게 차라리 성능이 나은 그런 측면이 좀 있어요. 그러니까 그게 이제 애초에 디멘전이 굉장히 크면 거기서 굳이 뭔가 이렇게 난리니어한 복잡한 쉐입도 잘 없고 네, 뭐 그렇다는 거거든요. 네, 뭐 하여튼 이건 좀 약간 여담이긴 한데 하여튼 그게 다 큰 틀에서는 아까 얘기했던 그 curse of dimensionality 혹은 뭐 그런 좀 뜨문뜨문 그리고 이제 우리가 다루는 공간이 이제 굉장히 스페이스 혹은 볼륨 자체가 너무 큰 거예요. 네. 네. 또 다른 혹시 질문 있나요? 질문 있어? 네. 그래요. 쉬는 시간 너무 길게 갖고 한 10분 그러면 쉬었다가 다시 시작하죠.
CNN이 제대로 한 건지는 잘 모르겠는데 이제 결국 부딪히게 된 문제가 이제 하이 디멘셔널 피처 단에서 이제 거기서 이제 그래프를 그리하는 순간 이제 그래프를 표현하는 데 드는 그 차원이 더 늘어나서 결국 메모리나 연산적으로 문제가 결국 생기게 되더라고요. 그래서 이제 그러면 간접적으로도 이제 클러스터링을 하는 방법 중에서 최대한 메모리를 적게 쓰고 아니면은 이제 다른 참조하는 걸 적게 해가지고 연산량을 줄이거나 해서 좀 그걸 돌아가게끔 하고 싶었는데 혹시 그에 적합한 클러스터링 방법이 좀 된 것 같아요?
그러니까 그게 제일 쉬운 방법은 그냥 아마 데이터 개수가 많아서 그걸 가지고 이제 페어와이즈 그래프를 만드는 게 아마 뻑이 났을 건데 그러니까 메모리 에러가 났을 건데 이제 그거를 직접적으로 핸들링을 하고자 하면 그 그래프를 이제 스파이시파이 하는 방법이 있어요. 그러니까 이게 그 그래프를 각 데이터 포인트별로 그러니까 총 100개 데이터 아이템이 있다. 그럼 첫 번째 데이터 아이템 포룹을 돌아서 첫 번째 데이터 아이템에 대해서 이제 뭐 99개에 대해서 이렇게 뭔가 따져요. 뭐 그걸 시뮬러리티 변환을 하든 뭔가 해서 그다음에 거기다가 우리는 K-nearest neighbor를 적용을 해갖고 1등부터 뭐 예를 들면 5등까지 뭐 이제 5 nearest neighbor가 되는 거죠. 그러니까 5개만 사용을 해서 나머지 그러니까 하나 빼고 5개 빼고 94개는 그 시뮬러리티가 5등 안에 들지 못한 애들은요 엣지를 없애버리는 거예요. 그러면 각 데이터 아이템별로 엣지는 딱 5개씩만 생겨요. 99개가 생기는 게 아니라. 그러니까 모든 데이터 100개가 있으면 100 by 100 혹은 100 곱하기 99 나누기 2만큼의 엣지가 생기기 때문에 이게 데이터 아이템의 제곱이 돼갖고 이게 메모리 에러가 나는 거거든요. 근데 그거를 이제 그 아까 좀 전에 얘기했던 그 개수를 그러니까 그래프의 엣지 개수 혹은 그래프에서 우리가 실제로 살아남기는 엣지를 정해두는 거예요. K개로 5개나 뭐 이런 식으로. 그러면 이제 100 by 100이 아니라 100 곱하기 5라는 정보만 저장하면 되거든요. 그런 식으로 이제 스파시파이 하는 방식이 일반적이고요.
네.
그런 식으로 많이 해요. 그래프 컨볼루션 뉴럴넷이든 뭐 그래프 다루는데. 그다음에 또 다른 방식으로 아까 데이터 수를 그런 식으로 줄이려고 하면 클러스터링에서 줄이려고 하면 일단은 뭐 K민즈 같은 경우는 이제 디멘전이 커서 잘 안 돌아가고 둘 다 크니까 잘 안 들어가는데 이제 그런 경우도 이제 많이 하는 게 그냥 PCA로 디멘전 확 줄여요. 그러니까 디멘전 아무리 크든 PCA 같은 걸로 한 뭐 100디멘전으로 줄여요. 거기다 클러스터링을 하는 거예요. 그러면 사실 클러스터링 결과가 이렇게 뭐 오리지널 스페이스에 비해서 뭐 100디멘전으로 줄였으니까 이게 뭐 굉장히 좀 뭐 변질이 많이 된 거 아니냐? 생각보다 그렇지 않아요. 클러스터링 결과는 큰 틀에서는 거의 유사하게 나타나거든요. 그러니까 그런 식으로 이제 디멘전을 그런 식으로 프리프로세싱을 PCA를 통해서 줄인 다음에 하는 거가 또 나쁘지 않은 방법이에요.
PCA로 줄인다. 그리고 피처
요즘에 하고 있는 연구가
뭐 질문이 뭐요? 혹시 간단한 질문이면
아니 아까
네.
그거 말씀하시길래
네.
그러니까 한쪽으로 해놓으면 일단 만족은 만족이잖아요.
근데
그래서
이게 근데 그게
근데 여기에도 그냥
네.
근데 KDD 거라서
네.
엄청 사이테이션이 높은데.
네, 이게 아마 오리지널 페이퍼일 것 같아요.
아, 네. 여기에 그런가요?
네, 그럴 거거든요.
아, 근데
네.
뭔가 그 라지 스페이셜 데이터베이스라 그래가지고.
네.
근데 여기 보면
이건 맞아요. DB스캔 오리지널 페이퍼가 맞을 거예요.
여기에 네 번째 쪽인
근데 이게 맥시멀러티는 이것만 그냥 문자 그대로 읽는다면 이 어떤 C 또 다른 C에서 저쪽에서 이제 쭉쭉쭉
그쵸. 그러니까 두 번 만족되니까 문제지 한 번도 안 된 건 아니니까 만족은 만족이지 않나 해가지고
네.
보면
오케이.
네, C1, C2가 가까울 경우에 그냥 먼저 된 거에다가 넣고 끊는다.
근데 이게 좀 그렇지가 않. 이게 Q가 근데 다른 클러스터에 있다 하더라도 그게 density reachable from P. 다른 클러스터에 있는 P에서 density reachable 하니까 이 Q가 그 다른 클러스터에 속해야 되잖아요. 그러니까 이거는 지금 만족이 안 되는 건데 그렇게 되면. 그죠?
문제가 좀
모르겠네요. 어쨌건 그렇게 한다 이거죠?
먼저.
고마워요. 네.
그리고 이게 혹시 그 디터미니스틱한 알고리즘인가요?
이거 맞다 이야기를 안 했는데 이거는
그러니까 방금 같은 이런 문제 말고는
네. 이건 근데 이제 그리디안 알고리즘 기본적으로 그리디안 성격이라 이게 누구에서부터 시작하느냐에 따라서 아까 여기서도 지금 하여튼 첫 번째로 시작하는 애가 더 큰 클러스터를 가져요. 그렇기 때문에 아까 이제 뭐 예제에서도 보면 이제 어떤 클러스터에서 먼저 하느냐에 따라서 아까 지웠나? 좀 누가 더 커지고 작아지고 그런 게
순서에
있어요.
따라 달라질 수 있어요. 그럼 이거를 혹시 논파라메트릭이라고 생각해도 괜찮아요? 약간 KNN 느낌이 살짝 나가지고
네, 그렇다고 할 수 있어요. 네.
그러니까 저는 일단
네.
자연어 처리 훈련을 연구를 하고 있는데 간단하게 얘기를 해보자면 어떤 특정한 뭐 예를 들자면 상품에 대한 인베딩이 존재를 한다고 할 때 이게 300인데 얘를 카테고리화로 분류를 시키고 싶은 게 목적이거든요. 근데 이 300의 인베딩을 각각의 상품에 대해서 한 5,000개에 대해서 갖고 있다고 치면은 저는 지금 어떻게 연구를 진행하고 있냐면 얘를 TSN으로 2,000을 줄여가지고 걔를 DB 스캔으로 돌려가지고 클러스터링을 하는 방식을 취하고 있거든요.
TSN을 한 다음에 DB 스캔 한다고요?
예.
근데 그게 일단은 클러스터링을 만약에 할 생각이면 그건 이제 로우 디멘셔널 인베딩으로 굳이 꼭 해야 되지 않으면 안 하는 게 좋아요. 그러니까 왜냐하면 TSN이든 뭐든 아까 얘기했던 것처럼 디멘전 리덕션이라는 첫 번째 단계에서 일단은 그 디스턴스 정보나 이런 게 굉장히 많이 변질이 되거든요. 그러니까 거기서 이제 클러스터링을 했을 때 나오는 게 조금 그냥 오리지널 스페이스에서 뭔가 하는 거를 추천을 하고요. 만약에 그걸 이제 디멘전을 줄여갖고 클러스터링을 하려고 하면 TSN이는 조금은 이게 아까 얘기했던 것처럼 데이터를 변질을 하는 그런 측면이 좀 많기 때문에 그 PCA로 그냥 줄이는 게 차라리 나아요.
굳이 줄이자면?
네, 그러니까 불가피하게 줄여야 된다. 아까도 뭐 좀 전에 이제 어떤 학생도 질문했는데 K민즈 같은 경우 이제 데이터 아이템 개수와 이제 그 디멘전이 그 두 개에 비례하거든요. 센트로이드나 디스턴스를 구할 때 다 그 디멘전 수에 비례하는 컴퓨테이셔널 컴플렉스를 가지고 데이터 아이템도 다 각각 일일이 그 센트로이드 각각들과 그 디스턴스를 계산해야 돼. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, regarding the issue of this whether to satisfy this DB scan, I mean whether DB scan satisfies this maximality or not. Yeah, I mean the algorithm that I described or we discussed seemed to be correct based on one student's comment who looked at the original KDD paper on this DB scan, and then the algorithm seemed to be correct. But yeah, in that case, I don't think this maximality is not satisfied for at least the subsequent clusters. Okay, at least for the first cluster, it will be satisfied, right? And so, in the case of the border point, that is actually the border of the two core points belonging to different clusters. And then, if one is formed first, and then the maximality will be only satisfied in the first cluster, right? And then also this DB scan, it is a kind of a local algorithm. I mean, depending on each run of this DB scan algorithm, the result may be different, right? So, and in general, the first formed clusters tend to be bigger than the latter ones. Any other questions about this DB scan? Okay, that's it for the first chapter. And then let's move to the second chapter on the clustering. Okay, so in the second chapter, the clustering method that we handle or we study is non-negative matrix factorization. So personally, I studied a lot and also did much research on this topic. Okay, and then so non-negative matrix factorization is not just a clustering method, but it's a general matrix factorization method. And then suppose we are given this feature vector representation as each of our column in our matrix. So this is and so on, right? And this is the person 1, person 2, and so on, right? And then we want to decompose it into the product of these two low-rank matrices, okay? And then here, if we have 5 different columns, and then from the perspective of a linear algebra, this guy will be, we'll have 5 different elements in this first column. And if it is maybe 1, 3, -5, and 2, -4, and then it means given these 5 column vectors on the left, okay, so this guy times 1, this guy times 3, and this guy times -5, and so on. So basically these one will work as the linear combination coefficient, okay, to form the first the first data item, okay. And then the second data item is represented as a linear combination of the same set of vectors, but different linear combination coefficient over here. So we have 5 different values in the second column of Rhine matrix H, okay. And so here, this is, in general, row-rank matrix factorization of approximating the given matrix A into the product of these two matrices, where we set the number of columns of the left and the number of rows of the right matrix. So it is currently set as 5. So this 5 is the number of clusters in the context of clustering applications. Okay. And so here, in general, if we consider the PCA, and then PCA works in the exact same manner. Okay, so MNIST and PCA, let's see. Okay, I think it's a screenshot or the visualization example of the PCA basis that we obtained from running this PCA from PCA on the MNIST data. So you guys know the MNIST data as the set of these digits, right? And then each digit image is having the size of 28 by 28, and then if we just slice them and then concatenate it into a vertical vector, and then it will be formed as 728 dimensional vector, 28 squared, right? 맞나요? 맞죠? 728? 아니네, 784. 784 dimensional vector, right? Okay, and then we have many of these digit instances or data items, and so we just concatenate them into these columns to form our feature by data item matrix, where each feature is the pixel value at the 1 by 1 comma 1, and the second vector is a 2 comma 1, and so on, right? And then maybe 28 by comma 1, and then 1 comma 2 and 2 comma 2, and so on. So that's how we form 784 dimensional feature vector for each image, right? And then if we perform the PCA, and then this will be decomposed into these two matrices. Okay, and then in the case of PCA, the columns of a W will be formed as orthonormal basis vector, where each column has the unit length or the length of 1, and then each column vector among these 5 different columns are orthogonal to each other. Okay, so their vector angles are always 90 degrees between any pair of these 5 vectors, right? Okay, so far so good. And then PCA will give us this coefficient values, and when decomposing this matrix into these two parts, W and H, in the case of an PCA, and then what's the linear transformation matrix that will reduce the dimensionality of A. And in this case, once performing this matrix decomposition, low rank matrix approximation, and then if we just multiply W transpose A, and then we have these 5 vectors as 5 orthonormal vectors as our W transpose, right? And then we have A over here. A is still 784 dimensional vectors, right? And so in this case, okay, so let's call this as a U1 and U2 and U3. So these are orthonormal basis vectors that we obtained from PCA, and then this is the first digit image. And so, okay, so this guy and this guy will form the first element, and this guy and the same guy will form the second dimensional coordinate. Okay, and then that way we will obtain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So this is the 5-dimensional representation of the first data item or first image. And then if we have a second image and their feature vector, and then once performing this inner product, and then that second vector will also produce another 5-dimensional column vector in the resulting matrix. And this part, okay, this part is actually the same as this H. And why is it so? If A is decomposed into W and H, and then let's consider W transpose A, and then it is like W transpose WH, and then W transpose W, when W has also normal columns, and then it will be identity matrix, right? And then yeah, let me just briefly prove that. And then U1, so this is a U transpose, or this is W transpose, and this is W, where we have 5 U1, U2, U3, U4, U5, right? And in this case, what's the first element over here? And that is like this guy and this guy. And then that is 1, because that is the inner product between the same vector, and their length is 1, right? And what about this guy, the U1 and U2? And that guy will be placed over here, and their inner product will be 0 because they are also normal to each other, right? And so we will all have 1 along the diagonal, and then along the up diagonal, yeah, all zeros, right? And so yeah, that way if we have an orthonormal column vectors and their matrix, and then their U transpose U or W transpose W will be always identity matrix. And so the remaining part will be H, and H will be obtained as this guy, W transpose A. So that way, W which is an product, or, which is the output from this low rank matrix factorization, and then its transpose is used as a linear dimension reducing linear transformation in PCA. Okay. And then from the perspective of a projections or orthogonal projection in our high dimension space. So if U1 is maybe 100 and 0 and minus 50, I mean assuming 3-dimensional vector, and then let's consider the input data item that we produce the first dimensional coordinate. And if this value, if we want to have this value, I mean if we want this value to be larger, given this W transpose, I mean the first row of W transpose, and then in that case this input matrix will be computed with an as an inner product with this vector, right? And then 100, and then the first dimension should be as large as possible, right? And then what about the second dimension? Second dimension should be as small as possible. I mean, if it is negative values, and then it will be better, right? And then what about the second one? I mean, it doesn't matter, right? And so, yeah, at a high level, this can be viewed as an inner product based similarity between the two vectors, and this one works as our template vector. And if our input vector is similar to the patterns of these values assigned in our template vector, okay, if they have a similar patterns, and then this dimensionality, dimensional coordinate value will be large, right? Okay, and then this although I only showed a 3-dimensional vector as an example, but this one is a 784-dimensional vector, and this one is also 784-dimensional vector, and then we can actually visualize the basis vector of each of U1, U2, U3, and so on. Okay, so in that case, what we can find as one of the basis vector is like this. Okay, so we have 784-dimensional vector for each of U1, U2, and so on. And each vector can also be viewed as, that can be reshaped into 28 by 28 as a, that has the original, the same size of an original image. And then if this value is large, and then in that dimension, I mean the first dimension using this row vector as an orthogonal projection, and then this pixel value, if that pixel value is high, and then the corresponding coordinate value will also be high, right? And so let's consider like this first basis vector computed from PCA, and in this case red is a positive and blue is a negative value, and then the gray part will be 0 values, and then this one is just a reshaped version of U1 transpose, right? And so if we consider the inner product with some image shown as a column vectors, and then we can reshape it into original image, and then we can just perform the inner product between these two images, right? It's simply just the element-wise multiplication and then summing all these product up, right? So in this case, if our data is like ones, and then that corresponding dimension will have a higher value, right? And then if it is a 0, and then it has a negative value, and so if we have a high positive, I mean large positive values corresponding to this circle, and then they will be multiplied with the negative values, and so that coordinate of this corresponding dimension will be smaller, or become negative value, right? So it's largely working, I mean, it's working as the dimension largely separating between 1 and 0, right? So this is one kind of particular kind of basis. And then if we compute, if we look at the other basis vectors, and then let's see, we may see some other basis like this kind of complex shaped basis. Okay, so in that case, it's like if our digit is 2, and then it may have a high coordinate, a large coordinate value, and maybe 0 or maybe 9, and that will have negatively large coordinate value. Okay, right. We can see how we can obtain those low dimensional coordinate values, and maybe those values in that manner. Okay, so we have some predefined template vector computed from PCA, and then those values will be the inner product result, right? And then from this perspective, and then this original feature vector is a linear combination of these 5 template vectors with some linear combination coefficient defined or computed over here and so on. So in case we use the facial images, and then we do the same kind of application of PCA in the same manner. So we first form pixel-wise column vectors on each image, and then we collect all the facial images, and then we just perform the PCA, and then these are the PCA bases. Then I think red means positive, and maybe black means negative value. Yeah, okay. So these are the reshaped visualization or reconstruction of each PCA basis images. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And so, this guy is the result of using 47 dimensional kind of PCA. We reduced the dimensionality into 47, and likewise from this matrix factorization perspective, it is 47. Okay. And then from here, similar to the case where we have a 5 basis vector, and then their corresponding 5 linear combination coefficients. Okay, to form the first vector and the second vector and so on. So we have 5, 7 basis vectors, and then in order to reconstruct the original image, we will also have 47 dimensional linear combination coefficient, and then we can also reshape it in this form. I think it's quite misleading, but there is no, there is no reason to just rearrange each of our bases in this two-dimensional kind of arrangement. But you can think of like each small grid or small grid of an image is originally like a column vector in our W. Okay, and then we have just the 47 column vectors in this manner. Okay, and then we also have 47 linear combination coefficient vector as a single column as part of our H, right? And then that is just represented as this color mapping into this form. So in this case, what's to mean? So this is maybe first data item or first image as one of first data item that we had in our facial image data, and then yeah, this guy is multiplied with this linear combination, this basis vector, and this guy is multiplied with this basis vector, right? So basically, given this template vector that we computed from PCA, and then we just multiply each template vector by a certain linear combination coefficient, and then we just sum them up, all these weighted template faces. Okay. And by the way, these facial images are called eigenfaces. I think I showed it already in the previous lecture. Okay, so this is almost the same result, right? And then the first, second, and so on. These are the basis template image vector that works as our W. I mean, each column of W. Okay, and then a linear combination coefficient will also be both positive and negative, right? And in this case, because our linear combination coefficient as well as these template images, I mean, both of them are allowed to be like positive or negative, right? So we don't have any restrictions on that, right? So in this case, yeah, it is often becoming quite difficult to interpret. So in this case, like this template image looks at the a little bit higher or larger pixel values around the eye region, right? The two eye regions. And if we consider like a large linear combination coefficient of maybe 10, in that case, it may contribute to representing some facial images that have large pixel values around the eyes, right? Well, what if this value is negative 10? And then what does that mean? I mean, does it mean like this eye region is like small pixel values? I mean, our pixel value is originally non-negative, right? And so what's the meaning of subtracting this image by multiplying it with negative 10 and then sum them up with the other template images? So allowing this linear combination coefficient as both positive and negative values, and then even if it's quite simple, just a linear combination, but their interpretation is a little bit trickier. Okay, so this is one drawback of this PCA. And so if we just perform this NMF or non-negative matrix factorization on the same data set, and then we may have much nicer decomposition. Okay, so what's the non-negative matrix factorization? So we still perform the same matrix factorization in this manner, but here, yeah, typically, yeah, I mean, it is not necessarily be so, but typically our matrix A is assumed to be all non-negative. Okay, these are non-negative values, but it's not necessary to perform the NMF. But anyways, yeah, for the sake of simplicity, we just assume that A is a positive one or non-negative one, which is indeed the case in the case of the MNIST image data and facial image data, because we handle pixel values as our input features, right? So pixel values are ranging from 0 to 255, and so they are originally non-negative ones. And also, if we just consider the bag of words feature vector of a document or term document matrix, where each element is representing the count or the frequency of a particular term in a particular document. In that case, the frequency or the count is also non-negative, right? So we will never observe the negative value, right? So our feature values are all positive or non-negative, and then that's a natural starting point to perform this NMF. Okay, and so A is non-negative, and also when performing the matrix factorization W and H, and each element is restricted to be positive ones. I mean non-negative ones. Okay. So in this case, what does that mean? So in this case, in the case of template facial images, so these are positive and these are positive and these are negative value. Okay. So what's the meaning of like high pixel value over here but negative pixel value over here? So it's already ambiguous. And also, as I mentioned, for some template images, what's the meaning of like of subtracting this facial images from the other combinations of other template images? So if we restrict W and each element in W and H to be all non-negative, and then performing the non-negative matrix factorization, and then the interpret, I mean how we their role will still be the same. So in each column of W will form our template images. Okay, and then given a particular data item that will correspond to maybe the first data item or first original facial image, and then in order to represent that as a linear combination of these template images and their linear combination coefficient, and those are all non-negative values. Okay, and once performing NMF, and then we obtain really nice decomposition of showing kind of part-based facial templates. So because we don't allow the negative pixels, so each pixel is either like positive or 0. And so suppose these black pixels are corresponding to the largest large pixel values, and so in this case this part, this template is corresponding to like a nose part, right? And then maybe this guy is a eye part, and then this part is maybe mouse part, right? And then we can also maintain this intuitive interpretability by using the linear non-negative linear combination coefficient. So we only allow the summation or positive addition of weighted template basis. So that way this NMF will give us much nicer and interpretable output as a matrix factorization. Any questions so far? So this non-negative matrix factorization was invented by some mathematicians, okay, and some famous guys, some famous professors actually brought this topic into the machine learning area. And so okay, so these algorithms, I mean, this non-negative matrix factorization was originally invented by some of the mathematicians, but as I mentioned, those two professors, whose name is Daniel Lee and Sebastian Sung, and they are actually recruited by Samsung recently, maybe 6 months ago or so. Yeah, so I believe they are kind of Americanized Korean actually, and they worked together a lot back in the days, and so both of them are basically neuroscientists or something like that. Okay, so they are really conducting some physical experiments using some mouse brain or something like that, and then do something on that. Okay, cognitive stuff and they kind of are inspired by some of these neuron stuff, and then they apply some of these physically or neurologically inspired ideas into the areas of machine learning. And then this is a only NIPS paper which got cited 7,000. And then they also have a similar ideas. I mean, those papers are almost the same, but this is a Nature paper, cited almost 10,000. And then okay, so these are some of the other examples of running the NMF on the other facial images. And so this one gives a much nicer images of showing some facial part and the hair part and the chin and things like that. Okay, so that way NMF gives this part-based basis. Okay. And then let's consider its application to the topic modeling of in document analysis or text mining field. And in this case, we can also consider the bag of words vector as our column vectors of an A. Okay, so you guys remember the bag of words vector? Okay, like this kind of thing. So if we have like multiple documents as one single document data set, and each document plays a role of a data item, and then we have each feature corresponding to unique keyword, right? And then we basically record the frequency or the count of each vector, right? So we consider this term by document matrix. And then suppose we just decompose it into these two parts. I mean the product of these two matrices. Okay. Okay, and then let's just consider really simple term document matrix. Maybe science, maybe AI, and maybe currency, which is related to maybe economy and things like that. Okay, and then let's think of some of let me just use some other one. Maybe president, which is related to a politics. Okay, and then the first document is maybe document 1, document 2 is 0, 1, 3, and maybe 1, 5, 2, maybe 5, maybe 4. So if we consider these two documents, and then let's consider this a matrix vectorization where we have a single template vector. Okay, so in this case we don't even allow multiple basis vector, but we only allow just one single basis vector. And then this part will be the linear combination coefficient, right? For this guy is a this guy times this guy is approximating the first one, and then this guy is approximating the second one. So in this case, okay, let's consider this guy as maybe 4 to 1. Let's consider this example. So in this case, 0, 1, 3 minus, let's call this a C1 and C2, and C1 times 4 to 1. Okay, and then we want to minimize the norm of this vector, right? So we want to find out the optimal C. And then 154, and that is also approximated by C2 times the same vector 4, 2, 1, right? So in this case, the norm of this guy is also minimized by independently optimizing C1 and C2. Okay? So how can we find the C1 and C2 in this case? So let's consider this first problem. And it's 0 minus C1 times 4 squared and 1 minus C1 times 2 squared plus 3 minus C1 times 1 squared. And we want to minimize that. Okay? So how can we find the C1 over here as an optimal value? So we just rewrite it into one single quadratic form or second order polynomial. And then we want to find the axis of this second order graph, right? So we can find out the optimal value easily over here. And also C2 can also be found, I mean the optimal value can also be found easily for C2 by separately or independently solving this function, right? And so here, let me change this problem. I mean, we are basically dealing with this approximation problem, right? So that way we introduced or we formulated the vector length or the norm of this difference vector or error vector, right? Any questions so far? And then let's consider this 4 to 1. Okay, so here in this case, intuitively, here we have two vectors that have relatively large values on the maybe second and the third dimension, right? So in this case, will this vector be better, or maybe will this vector be better? So we are basically approximating each vector as a scalar multiple of this vector, right? But this 4 to 1 is pointing to a quite different direction of the directions of these two given vectors that we want to approximate, right? So in that case, compared to this 4 to 1, I mean this 4 to 1 is not an optimal one. I mean that is not a good one, because that direction is quite different from these two. And so even if we just define the optimal C1 and C2 as a scalar multiple associated with this 4 to 1 as a common vector, okay, even if we found C1 and C2 optimally, but those error will be large. So intuitively, so in order to fit this guy, C1 should be small, but in order to fit this guy, C1 should be large. So that is where this conflict arises, right? But if we use a 1, 3, 4, and then roughly, if this one gets large and then this one gets large, and then they are kind of pointing to similar direction. And so when finding out this optimal C1 in this case of using 1, 3, 4, okay, and then it will have probably small errors. It will give us small errors, right? And also this in this place 4 to 1, and then if it is a 1, 3, 4, which should work as a common vector that we have to use, right? And in this case, even though that they may have a different patterns. I mean, they are pointing to a slightly different directions, but it will be it will provide a much better approximation compared to the case of using 4 to 1. Okay. So here, how about this case? President and AI. Yeah, maybe let's call it as a science, and then maybe democracy. So I'm trying to explain the topic modeling and the main idea of this topic modeling. Okay, so in this case, so let's consider the first and the second document closely related to the politics, but not related to science or AI. So in this case, so it will have maybe large value and the large value, and small value and small value, and the large value and maybe, and also large value and 0 and maybe 2, 1, and then maybe the D1, D2, D3, D4. So we have 2 other documents that are mostly related to AI and science, and 1, maybe 5, 6, and 0, 2, and 7, 5. Okay, so this is the term document matrix. Okay, so in this case, these 2 documents are containing more frequently those democracy and the president, right? And so these can be roughly related to the politics related documents, and then those 2 will be related to the science or maybe AI related document, right? So in this case, let's consider the matrix factorization. So here, in order to approximate this given big matrix, suppose we are given maybe 2 of these documents, or 2 of these template vectors. Okay, and then maybe in the H part we will have 2 linear combination coefficients to best approximate D1 and second one and fourth, third and fourth, right? So we can think of this decomposition. And first of all, what will be these 2 optimal vectors for these 2? So instead of just randomly set vectors, probably the best strategy will be like, maybe 5, 5, and maybe 0, 0, or maybe 1, 1, for example, and maybe 6 and 5. I mean, this is completely arbitrary one, but I'm just try to give you some intuition. So 0, 1. Okay, so in this case, so I'm trying to represent, although they are 4-dimensional vectors, but these 2 are pointing to the same regions, right? And then this one is maybe democracy dimension, and this one is maybe AI dimension, and then we have another vectors that are forming roughly a cluster, right, pointing to a same direction by having frequent keywords of this AI, but not many keywords on this president. It is president, right? Okay, so if we have roughly these 2 clusters in our term document matrix or bag-of-words vector representation, and in this case, as our basis vectors, we will, it will be our best strategy to set our basis vector as this guy and this guy, roughly pointing to the centroid of each cluster, and that centroid is this guy. Okay, and then what will be the linear combination coefficient? So for this guy, we can mainly utilize this guy, and maybe 1, 0, and we don't use this guy at all, and then we only use this guy. Okay, and then it will be 5511, and so it is roughly kind of approximating the first vector. And then what about the second one? Maybe it is a 1.5 and 0. Okay. And then yeah, in the case of third vector, yeah, we don't use this vector at all, and then yeah, we mainly use this vector, right? And so maybe 1 and almost 0, and for this guy 1.2 and maybe 0.3. Okay, so we studied about this matrix factorization in the context of a clustering, yeah, when discussing the k-means, right? So in the case in k-means, given this feature by data item matrix, and then it is decomposed into these matrix multiplication, where we put our centroid as the common column vectors over here on the left matrix, and then the right matrix, and each column should work as a linear combination coefficient, but in the case of k-means, those vectors should be restricted as one hot vector, right? When NMF can be viewed almost in the same manner, but here in the NMF, we don't actually have any restrictions on, I mean, we only have the restrictions to be such that each element in this part and that part should be all non-negative. Okay, so each column don't need to be summing up to 1, okay, as long as they are non-negative. Okay, so in some cases, maybe 0.3 and 0.5, it is still also possible. Okay, but if we perform this NMF based on this feature by data item matrix, and then it will roughly perform the clustering, and so this part will give us the cluster centroid, and these will give us the cluster membership. Okay, so here on each column, the largest entry and its corresponding dimension, and that is the cluster index, if we perform the hard clustering using this matrix factorization output. Any questions so far? Okay, so that is the main idea of this topping modeling. So this topping modeling is basically the soft clustering method for the document data, but this topping modeling can be used for any other types of data as long as the input data are non-negative. And then here, 네. 네. 실제로 어떻게 하냐고요? 네, 그래서 이거를 지금 배워보도록 하죠. Okay, so I'm gonna skip this conceptual explanation or introductory explanation, because you guys already know about this clustering kind of perspective of this matrix factorization. Okay, and then now let's look into the algorithm of how to optimize this W and H. 네.
그러면 지금 앞에는 화면 두 개를 맞추면 월드 토픽이라고 생각하는데.
네, 월드 투 토픽이에요. 각 클러스터를 우리가 이제 토픽이라고 불러요. 이 토픽 모델링 혹은 다큐멘트를 이제 소프트 클러스터링을 하는 토픽 모델링을 적용할 때.
그러면 그 오른쪽에 있는 그 매트릭스는
네.
토픽
네, 토픽 투 다큐멘트고, 각 토픽을 우리 새로운 디멘전으로 했을 때 그 이제 뭐 리듀스 디멘셔널 레프레젠테이션이라고도 생각할 수 있고, 아니면 이제 각 다큐멘트가 첫 번째 다큐멘트가 이제 첫 번째 다큐멘트를 이제 얼마나 가지고 있는가. 그래서 1.50 이게 좀 숫자가 별로 안 좋긴 한데 0.3 뭐 0.5 그러면 이제 첫 번째 토픽은 0.3만큼, 두 번째 토픽은 0.5만큼 이렇게 갖고 있다는 뜻이 돼요.
토픽의 개수를 몇 개 갈지는 정하는.
네, 그냥 임의로 좀 K-민지 클러스터에서 K 어떻게 정하는가랑 이제 동일한 이슈. 앨범 메소드로 정할 수도 있고요. 네, 또 다른 질문 있어요.
거기 토픽 2 웰베이스 매트릭스는 케이민즈 센트로이드를 쓰는
케이민즈 센트로이드를 쓰는 거냐고요?
아니면
네.
말씀하신
네. 우리가 이제 케이민즈는 이게 센트로이드 케이민즈는 사실 우리가 이제 그러니까 센트로이드가 가장 이제 옵티멀한 그거라는 걸 우리는 알았잖아요. 네, 여기서도 뭐 그렇게 나와요. 그렇게 나와요. 네. 근데 이게 좀 케이민즈는 그러니까 그 센트로이드가 이쪽이 이제 하드 클러스터링 된 결과니까 그랬었잖아요. 그러니까 이제 뭐 아니면 노처럼 누구는 속하고 어떤 데이터 아이템은 속하고 어떤 데이터는 속하지 않기 때문에 어떤 특정한 한 클러스터를 생각하면 그러면 이제 그 클러스터에 속한 애들 그리고 걔네들은 다 가중치가 1이잖아요. 근데 여기서는 이제 마치 우리가 이제 케이민즈가 이제 GMM으로 확장되듯이 모든 데이터 아이템이 사실 각 클러스터를 일정한 그 가중치만큼 갖고 있는 거예요. 그래서 어떻게 보면은 그 weighted sum의 형태로 나와요. 네. 그러니까 weighted average 형태로 나와요.
방금 사실 그 고정식하는 거 오른쪽 매트릭스만
네.
오티마이제이션 넣어서 말하시는
네.
그 왼쪽 매트릭스를
이거 네. 요거요.
그 부분도 값을 학습시키는
네.
방법이 있는
네. 있어요. 그러니까 그걸 좀 설명을 또 해줄게요. 네. 네. 시간이 얼마 안 남아서 시간 되는 데까지만 일단 설명을 하되. So we discussed about the coordinate descent, right? Coordinate descent, and we want to basically solve this minimization problem. Okay, so I think I already explained about this Frobenius norm, right? And then here, let's consider applying the block coordinate descent, where our blocks are indicating W and H. So we have basically two blocks, and we iterate between them. It means we fix one, and then optimize for the other groups of variables or block of variables, and then we fix that, and then we go back to the first set and then optimize them. Okay, so we iterate through these two blocks of the variables by using this coordinate descent. Okay, so initially W, which works as our basis vector, will be randomly initialized. Okay, and then we should be able to find the optimal values or optimal coordinate values, right? So let's consider the first vector, first column vector of an A as a 1, 2, 3, and W is maybe something like this. Okay, so in this case we want to minimize this problem, right? So that's how we obtain or optimize the first column of an H, right? So this is our W. And if we have the second column of A, so A is like 1, 2, 3, and maybe 3, 2, 1, and 3, 2, 1 is still using the same basis vector, but but different vector, different linear combination coefficient vector to best approximate this 3 to 1, right? So this problem of matrix factorization can be completely decomposed as an independent least squares problem over here, right? And then in this case, we can basically change between these two parts. Instead of using this minus this, then we can use this minus this, and then it's exactly like ax minus b, right? And so here yeah, we can obtain X as the normal equation solution. A transpose A inverse A transpose B. Right? And then we can also obtain x3 and x4 in the same manner, where we only change it. Yeah, we only have a different B part, but with the same A part. Right? So we can apply this least squares problem over here. But here we overlooked one of the important constraints. So what's the restriction to impose in NMF? Our linear combination coefficients as well as the basis vector should all be non-negative. And so this x1 and x2 will be non-negative values. Right? So what if our least squares problem is giving us the optimal solution as possibly containing the negative value? So for example, in this case, suppose it is maybe 2 and negative 1. Okay, so in this case, can we make it as maybe 2, 0? And will this be an optimal solution for this non-negativity constrained least squares? So basically we want to solve this least squares where x is non-negative vector. I mean each element of an x is non-negative value, right? So we know this closed form solution as a normal equation solution as an unconstrained least squares problem, but what if they have some non-negative entry over here, and then we still need this constraint to be satisfied. So in this case, can we just make simply non-negative values as 0? Will this be the solution for this constrained version of the least square problem? So the answer is no. So if we do this kind of heuristic or post-processing, and then this one turned out to be like incorrect or suboptimal solution for this non-negativity constraint least squares. Okay. Well, anyways, let's just continue. Even though this one is not correct one, but suppose this guy is maybe giving us the optimal solution for this constrained version of the least square solution. And then once obtaining x1, x2, and x3 and x4, and then we will obtain this h completely, right? And then how can we update this w? And in this case, 이게 내가 딴 데서 이게 좀 비슷한 강의를 해갖고 좀 헷갈리는데 여기서 내가 이 얘기를 했는지 안 했는지. So this Frobenius norm is the same as A transpose minus the H transpose W transpose Frobenius. Okay, so you guys know the Frobenius norm is the squared sum of each element of this error matrix, right? So we just basically where is A? Oh, yeah. So suppose we have this 3 by 2 A matrix as an A, and then we just transpose it, and then what's the transposition of this WH? It will be H transpose, W transpose, right? Right? And then now, here, this one was fixed as constant, and this one was unknown, right? And then we solved this guy, right? And then it's time to optimize W, and then here, in this form, we have an A transpose, which is completely known, and then H transpose is obtained over here. And this is, it's time to fix this guy. And this guy is unknown, right? And so, basically, solving for H is exactly the same as solving for W in this transpose perspective. Does it make sense? So, basically, we will just do the this second order polynomial and its optimization, finding out the axis, okay, of this second order graph. Any questions so far? Right, and then as I mentioned, this guy is not a optimal solution. Okay, so we can do better. I mean, if we use this guy in the place of an x, and then suppose we obtained the error as 1.8, so this is a total error, but if we use maybe 2.1 and 0, and then plugging this guy into the place of an x, and then we may have reduced error. Okay, so that means this 2, 0 is not our optimal solution. Okay, so we will study how we can obtain the optimal solution properly. Okay, so in this case, so let me spend maybe 1 more minute. So in this case, we can approach this problem as a 2-block coordinate descent, but we can also think of this representation as follows. So we have an A here and W and H over here, but this W and H can now be represented as a sum of outer product. This guy and this guy, and this guy and this guy, and maybe this guy and this guy, right? And then maybe W1, W2, W3, and H1 transpose, H2 transpose, H3 transpose, and then it is like the sum of W1, H1 transpose, maybe it's W2, H2 transpose, W3, H3 transpose, right? So in this case, how many blocks can we think of over here? We have 6 blocks over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So out of the total number of variables to optimize, we now have 6 blocks, right? And so at a high level, this one, I mean, approaching this problem as a 6-block coordinate descent, each sub-problem will be probably much easier than this 2-block one, because in the case of 2-block one, we have many variables to optimize at a time, right? So entire variable like this, entire variable in this matrix, right? But in this case, we only need to care about a single vector, right? While fixing all the other parts, right? So at a high level, this one is a kind of easier kind of block coordinate descent approach. So we will see how we can solve based on this sum of an outer product perspective next time. Okay, that's it for today. So yeah, for the homework, that works as an alternative to our term project. I'm still preparing for it, and then it will be announced later this week. Okay, thanks.
과제를 안 내신 거죠? 네. 아, 네. 진짜. 제가 저번 주에 못 알고.
네네. 그게 하여튼 그 텀 프로젝트 대신에 이제 해도 되는 과제를 내기로 했고요. 모두 다 할 필요는 없어요. 그러니까.
그러니까 하면 그냥 가점이 주어지는.
가점이요. 그러니까 텀 프로젝트가 자유주제로 있는데
네.
그게 이제 마땅치 않은 사람들은
이
과제를 하면 돼요. 네.
그게 다음 주에 공개.
네. 이번 주 아마 후반부에 내가 좀 공개를 하려고 해요. 네. 네.
제가 지금 토픽 모델을 그 레이턴트 베리어블 사용해가지고 하는 레이턴트
디리클레 로케이션?
네. 그걸로 하고 있는데 걔랑 얘랑은 아예 관련이 없는 두 가지 방법인 거예요.
이 NMF라는 타픽 모델링으로 썼을 때의 이 NMF랑요.
네, 네.
그게 이제 타픽 모델링을 하는 방식이 그러니까 다큐먼트 데이터를 이렇게 결국 소프트 클러스터링이에요. 네, 소프트 클러스터링
그러면 KMNG랑 EM과의 관계라고 생각해도
뭐 그럴 수 있어요. 네, 그럴 수 있고 뭐 네, 큰 틀에서는 두 개가 좀 장단점이 좀 있는데
네.
알고리즘도 완전히 다르고
네.
그 다음엔 걔네들의 어떤 아웃풋이나 어떤 인풋에 부여되는 어떤 특성이나 컨스트레인트도 조금 달라요. 그러니까 예를 들면 이 NMF 기반으로 접근했을 때는 여기에 예를 들면 TF-IDF 같은 거 해도 되거든요.
네.
TF-IDF 한 거를 입력으로 넣어도 돼요. 근데 이제 저쪽 그 LDA는요 무조건 텀 카운트로만 해야 돼요. 그러니까 텀 다큐멘트 매트릭스가 정수가 아니면 안 되거든요. 그건 뭐 하여튼 그런 또 컨스트레인트가 있고 그 다음엔 이게 이제 이 W가 그 아까 얘기했던 뭐 term by topic 매트릭스고
네.
저쪽이 topic by document 혹은
네.
각 tofic을 이제 term에 대한 디스트리뷰션으로 나타내는 게 W고
네.
document를 이제 topic에 대한 디스트리뷰션으로 나타내는 게 그게 뭐 하여튼 H인데 근데 이제 이제 LDA는 그 다큐먼트를 그 topic에 대한 그 sum to one으로 생긴 그 디스트리뷰션을 줘요. 네, 근데 이제 여기서는 sum to one은 안 나와요. 그러니까 이 여기 예를 들면
그러니까 토픽마다 가중치가 다를 수 있다는.
네, 그리고 그 가중치가 난네가티브인 거는 probability
네.
디스트리뷰션과 어느 정도 동일하지만 왜냐하면 probability로도 난제로 마이너스 낼 수 없으니까. 근데 이제 중요한 건 sum to one은 안 나오죠, H가. 네, 근데 그것조차 뭐 좀 적당히 앞쪽에 있는 인풋 매트릭스의 각각의 백오버즈 벡터를 적당히 L1 혹은 L2 노멀라이즈를 하면 사실 그것도 어느 정도는 비슷하게 나와요. 그래서 사실 큰 틀에서는 뭐 그런 디테일한 차이가 있긴 한데 이론적으로도 조금 뭐 이런 좀 차이가 있긴 하지만 쓸 때는 거의 비슷해요. 그리고 성능도 누가 줬느냐 비슷해요. 네, 어느 정도 비슷해요. 그리고 둘 다 난 컨벡스 메서드라 돌릴 때마다 조금씩은 아웃풋이 다르고요. 네. 네.
교수님,
네.
제가 아까 오늘 쉬는 시간에
네.
발견을 했는데요.
네.
4월 중순쯤에 이런 논문이 나왔더라고요.
네.
텍스트에서 페이스 제너레이트 하는 저희가 하려던 태스크 거의 그대로
네.
논문이더라고요.
네.
그래서 처음 이 연구 시작할 때만
네.
해도 검색해도 아무런 연구가 안 나왔었는데
읽어봤나요 혹시?
지금
네.
이제 읽기 시작해서 제가
네.
오늘
그래요.
네,
오늘 뭐 공유해줄 수 있으면 해주고 아니면은 뭐
네, 오늘 그 발표 한번 해드리려고
네.
해볼게요.
그러면 좋고요, 아주 좋고요. 네.
그래서 봤는데
이게 텍스트가 어느 정도예요?
그래서 이렇게 어느 정도 그 뷰티에 관련해서도
네.
뷰티풀 우먼이라든가 아니면은
네네네.
잘생긴 남자 뭐 이런 식의
음.
그런 테스트도 있고 보통은 그 어떠한 눈을 갖고 있다, 어떠한 코를 갖고 있다, 어떠한 입을 갖고 있다 같은 그런 묘사가 주가 돼요. 그래서 어트리뷰트 그 위주보다는 좀 더 그 눈, 코, 입이 어떻게 생겼는가에 대한 게
조금
있고
네. 일단
예쁜가 안 예쁜가
테스크는 많이 비슷하네요.
네,
한번 좀 네. 그래요. 뭐 일단 문제가 그게 먼저 나왔다 하더라도
네, 그래서 다른 노벨티를 가지려면 어떻게 해야 될까?
네, 그게 뭐 일단은 내 생각엔 좀 리치하게 이제 레이블을 한 데이터들을 좀 만들면 거기서 좀 훨씬 더 이거보다 파워풀하게 뭐가 되면 사실 이게
여기서도
네.
페이스와 텍스트에 관련된
네.
이
자체를
테스트를 위한
구축했어요.
그 데이터셋도 우리도 하나 구축했다라는 얘기도 있어서
그럼 그게 공개가 돼 있나요?
아직 안 했는데 공개할 예정인 것 같아요.
그래. 그러면 뭐 조금은 빠르게 저자한테 이메일을 한번 보내는 것도 좋을 것 같고요.
네.
네. 이 괜히 하여튼 뭐 이게 약간 성능 측면에서도 뭔가 기존의 어떤 어프로치를 확 좀 압도하면 그거를 또 사람들이 또 페이퍼로 좀 또 어느 정도는 받아주는 측면도 좀 있고 하니까 뭐 한번 한번 뭐 알려주면 좋을 것 같아요.
네.
네.
그래서 제 개인적으로는
네.
그래서 페이스에서 그러니까